those new pieces of equipment are going to be operated and maintained largely by ILWU. But it's not limited to that. We also know that whether or not the end application is focused primarily on the cargo handling equipment, there's also the charging infrastructure that's going to be needed. Additionally, probably investments in solar, microgrid, battery storage, a lot of parts that involve IBEW and our unified electric workers. But as we explore towards that community benefit portion, and community solar was brought up largely, how do we involve groups like Grid Alternatives that have worked with at-risk youth and young adults in providing community solar and have demonstrated how they can bring it to areas like the Wilmington Senior Center, to areas like the Suchi Community Clinic in Wilmington as well. And so I don't want to give, with any of these meetings, too much about what the Congresswoman's priority is specifically within the application, because we really do want that to be community-led. But I'm glad to speak on why the Congresswoman advocated for this program, why it was a priority, and how we can be of support going forward. If I can turn it over to Professor Abel, just next.
I don't speak for the board, so I'm sorry.
Did you want to ask? Yes, what I wanted, so I didn't even hear all of the first question because I was writing down ideas. As I mentioned, I live in San Pedro also, so one of the things I was thinking, we need trained folks in electrical, right? And it's one thing to say, you mentioned starting at, even as early as middle school to identify maybe some pathways for our youth. So I was writing notes down here like, should we give scholarships for electrical engineers or electrical technicians? And anyway, aside from that, that's Teresa from San Pedro, not Teresa from Port of LA. But I wanted to mention, for those who may not know, starting back in 2005, we started doing an annual inventory of air emissions, and within that document, on an annual basis, we go to the terminals and get an inventory of the equipment that's there. We track hours of usage and calculate emissions from that, and that would be for the cargo handling equipment, the heavy-duty on-run trucks, the rail, the ships, and harbor craft. And so we do that every year, and we post the progress from, usually air reductions. We had a year where during the pandemic where our emissions went up. We're seeing, so we had a lot of emission reductions since 2005, but in the recent years we have not had significant reductions, but we do track it each year. We'll continue to track it, and I think that part of the reporting on the progress I think is important for the community, and we can see that if we're continuing to make progress or where we need to focus some of our energy and efforts to continue seeing improvements in the area.
Anything else around sustainability and longevity? Zero emission in 2005 with the tour buildings to the grant already that y'all are thinking about?
So I don't know, and that we don't see rolling back, right? I think Laura mentioned multiple times, this is for equipment that is proven technology. We've had multiple demonstration projects where once the demonstration ends, the equipment is no longer used because it maybe wasn't working properly or there were other concerns with it. These grants are for replacement of equipment, not merely a demonstration, so it's a bit different than what we've done in the past. So I think maintenance and support is important. The infrastructure, I think one of the reasons it's taken so long to have infrastructure in place, you mentioned some of the terminals are trying to make the decision on what their equipment's going to be because they see using it into the future. They don't want to use something that then they have to stranded assets is what they call it. We're trying to avoid that, and so part of this grant is for the infrastructure that's going to be permanent, and it's going to require ongoing maintenance and support. And this is a conversation we're not going to roll back on. We're going to continue having these, and I think that's important to maintain this progress.
Next question
So, and we've documented the 100-year war with the port over the issues of industrial pollution. And we're one of the few publications that have done so. But my perspective on this is twofold. One, to go zero emission at this point, the infrastructure, the DWP, the electrical infrastructure, of course, is completely under prepared for being able to handle a complete electrification of the port. And there's two ways to go about solving that. One is to put solar or wind power on every terminal in the harbor. That would be one solution. What would benefit the community most would be to offer grants to all of the local businesses and homeowners to place solar power, solar on their roofs. Because we've got plenty, we've got, 300 days a year that is filled with sunshine. So that's the capture of the solar, or the wind energy order. But it needs to be close enough to the port to be able to build the infrastructure to connect all of the zero emission demand that is coming. But at this point, if we were to actually go completely, tomorrow, for some magical reason, we could, have everything be zero emission, the grid would crash because there would be more demand than there is supply. And so that has to be fundamentally fixed by the DWP, not through a grant, but out of their own investment in infrastructure, out of their own general revenue. And that should also come from the port, out of their own general revenue. And all of the terminal operators need to be investing in that kind of electrical grid. Because if they're gonna meet the 2035 deadline, that's like tomorrow.
Do you have a question you wanna ask folks as well, or if you write a grant, anything you wanna?
I don't think there's, I think it's an engineering question. How do you get there? Okay, and what's going on right now is a whole lot of studying and reports and, head scratching. And I think that the direction is perfectly obvious to anybody. You set a goal, and you set the engineers and the designers to work to actually accomplish the goal. And therein you need to have budget.
Any additional thoughts on economic impact on the port's running businesses? Questions or ideas?
Yeah, if I could just chime on to James' comment, please.
Thanks, James.
Yelling guy.
So one of the activities that's eligible through the EPA Clean Port program is for solar power generation systems. And I think it may have been earlier before you arrived, but the port was sharing some of the prospective projects that they may include in the proposal. And I believe it was TradePac that had included solar installation as one of their priorities on their terminal. But I don't know that that's been identified as a priority for other terminals. So that feedback is really helpful for this group here to understand that, while we're looking at equipment and infrastructure, due to those electrical capacity issues that have, been so detailed and people were discussing earlier, that, solar generation may be something that people ought to be highly considering as looking through this proposal.
In every one of the port's leases, they could easily include some kind of mandatory commitment to building out their infrastructure. And right now, they're renewing leases all over the place, particularly for oil companies. Okay? If you look at tomorrow's agenda, there's a whole bunch of lease renewals or something for all of these big oil companies. That, the question is, do you really want to give a 30-year lease to an oil company when we're trying to go, carbon neutral? If you do, then part of the lease should probably, that they have to have, that terminal be zero emission neutral. That would be like astounding, wouldn't it? Forrest Phillips 66 or Valero or whatever. To not be polluting. Well, they're polluting.
Okay, so, we're almost at time. Just kind of a recap, it looks like I went through some of the questions that we had in my basket. We covered a lot. We did cover a lot around community benefit. We have some invitations to go in most future sessions in community. Gentlemen here, you mentioned you heard about the event through a group. What group was it? What group was it that you heard about today's event from?
Indivisible San Diego.
Okay, are they like a club, organization?
Fighting for Democracy.
Okay, cool. So that worked. It was through email?
We're neighbors. We're
Okay.
community.
So was it through email or social media? How did you hear about it? Email, social media?
Yeah.
Okay, so that works. I heard you talking about community engagement, actual going out to people, so maybe some flyering with recyclable paper, or something in person. You have thought of that?
We do stakeholder engagement through sidewalk engagements,
Yeah.
pop-ups, farm tables, block parties, charrettes, infrastructure assessments, community walkthroughs, we hold open houses. And what we find effective is canvassing engagement, door-to-door and October.
So I think that speaks a lot to your organizing background. You talked about the grant that you got in the past and how important that is to have in this space. That is something I think that's missing here are more residents and folks from those communities as well. We had some great lists generated around the kinds of groups we could look to, folks from senior community, farmers, gardeners, schools, universities. I hope you all, it was aligned, and then maybe some new ideas too that were shared. Talked about a little bit about those partnerships, some of the long-term benefits, which I think the community expressed. So we pretty much covered it all. For now, there will be future sessions, and as Dana said, this is the soft launch. I do have a pitch for the guy who was here earlier, gardening. He said, Omar, I think you should make a t-shirt that says like plants are natural filters, something, to a fundraiser. So some fun ideas here. There is a QR code here. We are asking if you would please scan it and just fill out a couple of questions here from today. Your feedback is really important to this process. And I do believe that people who show up to things are the ones who are meant to be there, and this is the beginning, and you all are part of making that beginning. So I want to thank you all for your time, and then I'm going to pass it back to Dana to wrap it up.
Thank you, Melissa. So thank you. Please scan the QR code. Please do the survey for evaluation. We need feedback. And let us know where we can come and share. Bonnie and I will be in touch. Jesse, of course, we're already reaching out. And Graham. So I appreciate you all for coming. I think this is, small, but really, really powerful representation. And we garnered a tremendous amount of substantial feedback that, again, we are aggregating and are communicating both to the EPA as well as the Port of Los Angeles, not just for the application of the Zero Emissions Technology Deployment Grant, but broadly for, as Bonnie mentioned, the many sort of opportunities.
And do you add DOE in there too?
Department of Education.
No.
Energy.
Sorry.
And education too.
DOE has $17 billion they're sitting on right now.
I was thinking energy and said education, Department of Energy, also, DWP, LADWP, is coming out this summer, so, you know, again, aggregating all of the feedback, and this is just the very beginning, so I appreciate everybody for coming, thank you. Oh, jeez.
So, if you really wanted to community engagement, you do what this gentleman says, and you go to the communities that are most impacted, which are the oldest part of the communities that are closest to the heart. And you go door to door, and you put a door hanger, you give them a copy of my newspaper, whatever you want to do, okay? Something that is tangible for them, because at this point, the majority of the community is, this is like, okay? And you're not going to get the majority of the community here in the middle of their workday.
So,
They have to go pick up children, they gotta go to work.
James, let me speak to that. We are absent, and I appreciate that feedback. We, are actually going to all the councils, neighborhood councils. Lauda just had a meeting with, a number of the boys and girls clubs, and YWCA's around Wilmington and San Pedro, so that we can go to teens. We're going to have a sort of QR, let the teens kind of scan it and answer 2 questions. We are in Wilmington tomorrow evening. We are providing childcare. We have translation here. And so initially, this morning was to be for business community, this afternoon for NGOs, you know, faith communities. And we kind of said, let's just open it up to everyone. But we're absolutely doing a myriad and varied approaches. We are engaging and trying to stand up promotores to help us, you know, door to door and lean in on that expertise.
Excuse me, Dana, my point is simply this.
Thank you, James.
There should be 100 people here today.
Well, there should be.
There should
There is
be.
also, another presentation at 6 p.m. tonight that will be online. It's a Zoom presentation, and we'll also have community feedback.
But
So
there
we're
ain't
doing
nothing
several
like
of them.
having
I
our first
absolutely agree
meeting so
with
we
you.
can have this kind of
Do you know-
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you all for coming. And we're going to have lunch at some point.
So you'll
What
hear
time is it?
who's here.
Oh, lunch will be here until